When I first learned about anxiety and how wrong so much of it was like I had infinite things to say. Follow the pain. If you're having that neck pain, if you're having back pain, nausea, for me, it was nausea. Some people have tingling. Those are very objective realities.
Do you struggle with anxiety? Feel like you're an overthinker? And more than anything else, really try to figure out how to make your mind stick to decisions or rather even make them. I spoke to author Meredith, the author of Get Out of My Head, about this and so much more recently. I'm dropping that for you guys to watch in its full form. But before you go there, I want to make sure you hit subscribe and smash that bell icon. I'm Varun Duggirala, and this is Take a Pause. I have to start this off by saying sometimes you find conversations on Twitter which aren't necessarily just text. And I think this conversation is going to be one of those. Meredith, I remember finding your book in the Next Week Idea Club. And then I went deeper and I bought the book and I read it once and I read it again and I took a lot of stuff from it. And then I tweeted something from your book and then you responded and I messaged you and said, I slid into your DMs, as they call it, as I hear the young folk call it. I slid into your DMs and I was like, do you want to come on my podcast? And we're talking now. Two overthinkers talking on for me a Friday night. For you, it's in the morning. And we're talking about overthinking. Is there anything more? Is there a better, more perfect plan than this?
I love it so much. I get so excited when I can tell a genuine overthinker has understood and connected with my book. There is nothing I like more, and I could tell immediately, like, he gets it. Varun gets it. And so I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you about this.
I want to start off by asking you, how did this all start? When I read your book, and obviously I've read how overthinking became an area of focus, how mental health became an area of focus, how all of this, and what I enjoyed about the book is you write about it not like, it wasn't like you got too technical with it, because that often gets overwhelming for anybody to kind of get, and that there's a lot of that out there now. Everyone's talking about how your brain works, and there are too many, I would call it neuroscience suddenly seems to be what everybody's Googling and writing about these days. But when I read your book, what I actually got out of it was this. You spoke about like how all of us should speak about it because we all overthink. So have you always been an overthinker? How did you, and how did you stumble into writing this book eventually?
Yes, all of this was very surprising to me. And when you say you're a midlife creator, I also am a
Hmm.
midlife creator. So I um as a little kid, I definitely ruminated. I definitely thought a lot and like thought about my thoughts and I wrote all the time. But I never realized anything about it, but I also had migraines and stomach aches and stiff necks always.
Hmm.
And fast forward through lots of life, and I was 39 years old working at startups. I was at lots of
Hmm.
startups here in San Francisco, and they were very tough. It was just tough to go through startup experiences. And I was being let go from a startup. And the
Hmm.
person who was letting me go from the startup said, I think you might be depressed. I had no idea. And I didn't know what was true. I didn't even
Hmm.
actually believe. I was like, something is wrong, but I don't know what that is. I just know I'm like sick all the time. And then the next week, I went to see my neurologist about migraines. And out of the blue, again, she said, you have generalized anxiety disorder. And it was thrilling, actually. It was like the best. It was like light bulb. Like, what? That's what all of this is?
Because you kind of knew, okay, maybe I can figure out what this is. Yeah.
Yeah, things had felt so strange, but I really did not know why. And and then a few days later, I turned 40. All of those things happened in 1 week. So that was a very
Hmm.
pivotal week for me. And it was so confusing about why I did not know. Why did I not know that all of this thinking was anxiety? I just really didn't know. I had even been calling myself an overthinker on social media for
Mm.
years before that. Like I knew something was happening. I just didn't know there was any problem with it. And I certainly didn't know that that was connected to why I had neck pain and nausea and like all this other physical stuff. So, right after my diagnosis, I did what everyone does, which is I went onto Google and I looked up, what is this
Mm.
anxiety? What is anxiety disorder? And what I saw was a lot of writing, like you said, that's very, it didn't, it didn't connect for me. It said a lot of things around you're worried all the time. And I never felt worried. I felt
Mm.
actively engaged. I felt like I'm going to solve everything. If I work hard enough, I can solve everything. I never thought there was anything wrong with it. I just knew, like, give me a problem and I'll work, work, work to solve it. And so that moment was where I said to myself, this is not talking about things the way I need that to talk about things. And I'm probably not the only person in the
Yeah.
world like this. So I built
Yeah.
a website, and like you, I renamed it 3 times. In the first year, I renamed my website. And in the end, it was called Beautiful Voyager, and that's what it's been called. And I'm 46.
Yeah.
Am I 46 or 47? I lose track of time now, but I've been working on it for about 7 years now,
The
nearly.
last 2 years have been a blur, so I don't blame you.
It's all just like what it's all mixed in. So I've been working on it for about 7 years. Now, when I first learned about anxiety and how wrong so much of it was like I had infinite things to say. I just started reading and reading and writing, and more writing even than reading, about what I saw as this disconnect and what I was feeling and what I was seeing in people around me. And over time that became the book. But it also became almost an approach that I have, which
Mhm.
is visual as well as written. So as you notice, the book is very visual. I worked with an artist because I
Yeah.
wanted the feel of the book to be something. Like, it was very important to me
Yeah.
that it's not just another sort of. There were just a lot of books that were very similar, and I wanted it to feel differently.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that struck me about just like something you just said, I'm going to come to that because neck pain is a constant in my life. And when you
Oh my
said this,
god.
and I never thought about anxiety and neck pain as being connected. And like I wake up with the stiff neck most times. If I'm doing a podcast, and if I'm doing a podcast where I'm actually talking with someone and I'm trying to figure out what to ask, I I finish the recording and I get up and my neck's stiff. Right, happens so often. Um, I've tended to say I have anxiety. I think the problem is, and tell me this just from the community as well as what you heard. When we tell ourselves we have anxiety, we say it out loud, and then a lot of people also say, "Are you sure you have it?" You very easily can
I
just throw
know.
that word around, right? I'm also I don't blame some of them because I for the longest time claimed I had ADHD without being diagnosed. Then I went to someone and she said, "I don't have ADHD. I have autonomy." So I'm like, what's that now? So I literally went into that. Say that if somebody tells me to do something, then basically run in the opposite direction. I will do what you tell me to do, but I will do it my way. Is the easiest explanation I can think of for autonomy, right? So when I said I'm getting anxiety, it's always like, are you sure you have it? I mean, you're one of those people who seems to be saying you have things which you don't really have. But the more I think about just anxiety and being a part of our lives, I didn't even know that was a thing beyond a word you would use till like a few years ago. So when you looked at the community, when you saw the stories kind of coming through, so what people were sharing, what kind of struck you as that started off? I think the initial part when that started off, you would have also kind of gotten because some of the stories from people are so relatable, like which are in the book. And what initial did that change how you were looking at it when you started off?
So I started by saying, hey, this was my experience. I had this physical pain. I had all of this stuff, but the words didn't relate to me. Am I the
Hmm.
only one?
Yeah.
then I started writing about it. Then I really wanted to connect with other people and find out what they were experiencing. And over time, what I found was there are traits of an overthinker that seem
Yeah.
very consistent across cultures, like across socioeconomic backgrounds. Like one time I was in a Mexican restaurant and the waiter was asking questions and he seemed super aware of something that was happening on the other side of the room. I could
Hmm.
just tell he was an overthinker. Like we had very different backgrounds. You know, he had a very thick accent and was from Mexico. We talked afterwards. We ended up talking
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
he was really interested in the work, but like that was because he had the sensitivity. There's like sensitivity to sound. Some of it
Hmm.
seems a little ADHD-ish, like
Yeah.
sensitivity to
Yeah.
sound, sensitivity to surroundings, a deep awareness of people around you and what how they
Yeah.
behave and what you're getting from how they behave.
Yeah.
And these things kept happening over and over. Meeting people from different backgrounds, different cultures, all having this overthinking quality. I don't even
Hmm.
care. Like, I use the word anxiety just because that's what the establishment uses. That's what sort of
Yeah.
it is said anxiety disorder. But my and everyone also for me wanted to be like, were you diagnosed? Were you diagnosed? And I did go
Yeah.
through those processes, but I didn't find them very helpful. I went to,
Hmm.
University of San Francisco and saw somebody.
Because they don't give you a solution.
Not only that, but I felt like they kept asking me whether I had anxiety. Like, I remember the
Hmm.
when I was going to see the
Yeah.
therapist, he was like, "Well, let's make sure it's not bipolar. Read these books and tell me." And I'm like, "What? You're stressing me out." Like, you're asking me to tell you whether it's bipolar? Are you kidding? This is not the right process.
Yeah.
So I don't, I know a lot of people are very like, what is the diagnosis? Is it the diagnosis? And that is, you know, maybe part of your journey. It was for me. Being told like, hey, it's an
Yeah.
anxiety disorder was very helpful to me. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I always say like follow the pain. Follow the
Hmm.
if you're having that neck pain, if you're having back pain, nausea, for me it was nausea. Some people have tingling. Those are
Hmm.
very objective realities. Like
Yeah.
you know whether that's happening or not.
Yeah.
So I learned for myself, and I've seen this with other people, to use those experiences as your gauge. That's what you need to understand, and the
Hmm.
rest is just word choice.
You know, there's this one piece which comes in the beginning, which I that's what I think in many ways I kind of got sucked in. Right? Is that you talk about waves and you talk
Yes,
about how, because I've always assumed, because that's the first time I think a lot of us realize we have anxiety. So when you get that feeling that
I know.
when there's something you're doing is making you feel like you kind of want to go into a shell, right? It's that feeling that you want to figure. It's almost like you want to hide in yourself, like you're hiding within yourself. It's
Yes.
that constant feeling. But when you write about waves, you write about the fact that that point is actually when you're getting out of it, and not necessarily when you're. It's like it's passing through.
That was one of my biggest moments of realization. Yes, my one of my
Yeah.
biggest moments of realization was that moment where you're the shakiest, where you're like feel almost the worst. That is actually a sign of the hormones moving through your body. That is like the shakes are often what happen before you sort of restabilize.
Hmm.
And it's important to understand what the hormones are doing because when you have that knowledge, you're like, okay, bring it on, shakes. Like, next thing
Hmm.
is that it's over. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of, you hear that a lot, right? Like, if you're going to go give a talk, and you're scared, like also be like, I'm also excited. You sort of like help
Yeah.
yourself understand what the hormones are doing in your body. It's the same. It's like helping yourself reframe to understand literally this is what's happening with the hormones. I'm shaking. That's
Yeah.
like me like discharging the wave.
Yeah. It's not like it's coming onto you, it's actually leaving you. And I
Yes.
remember reading that part and it hit me saying that the number of times when that feeling has hit me, and I think it's especially been a lot more I would say in the last 2 years. I think the pandemic just brought out so many of these feelings, and like I had anxiety leaving the house. I went through this phase where I would not leave the house, and I would just sit at home. I would not go downstairs where I can just go for a walk, right? In our building, and I would be like, no, I'm just staying at home. And at some point, the others in the house, my wife and daughter, would say, "Can you just come on the roof? And like we have a walkway on the roof. Can you just go walk on the roof?" And and every time I went out, every time I saw people around, and if they're not wearing a mask, that's a whole different problem. Um, I just kind of felt like, can I just go back to my safe space? But when I read this, I'm like, one second, maybe that's just like, I think it's also a way to say that these things pass through you. You just need to hold on till they do, is what I actually got out of that, more than anything else. It's just that it's not like it's going to stay in you; it's going to go out.
I love
Um,
that.
eh,
I
yeah,
love that. And the other thing is that, let's say, seeing other people, I know exactly what you
mm,
mean, right? Or even doing this conversation. It's like,
mm,
okay, here we go. We're going
yeah,
to get on Zoom. We're going to talk to each other. I'm actually very proud of us. Like, look at us. We're doing this. This is
yeah,
great. Um, but ahead of time, often ahead of time, when you're thinking something's going to be so bad, or when you don't want to
mm,
go outside and you're thinking about it, that's actually
yeah,
the part that is the most painful. When
yeah,
you've done it or you're doing it and you're out there, when you're talking, like you're discharging it and there's growth there.
yeah.
Um so yeah, just confirming what you're saying. I think that's exactly right.
I think one of the other points which I think really stood with me is that you actually say in between that like a dose of levity at the right moment can magically loosen overthinking's grip.
I mean, that is just hard. That's just what I've experienced in my life.
At some point, and I don't think, and so I want to dig into that because I feel that can also be misconstrued as saying crack a joke when someone's feeling, when someone's overthinking it. That doesn't help.
No. No, no, no. It's actually about them. It's
Yeah.
about them. Part of it is understanding the other person enough to help them. It doesn't work the same way for everyone. For me,
Yeah.
if someone makes fun of me, like my husband is like, "Oh, that garbage is going to come in and it's going to take over our house." If no one picks up that garbage, that makes me laugh and I
Yeah.
feel very understood. I'm like,
Mm.
"Yeah, that is what it seems like." And I know it's absurd, but it makes me laugh and then I feel better.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
everyone is like that.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of understanding how to help that person feel that.
Yeah. I've actually, and when I, and this made me think that I'm that person who will see something, think of something, and laugh by myself randomly in between people, and everyone look at me like, "What are you laughing at?" Now in my head, I'm like,
I
maybe
love
I was
that.
just feeling awkward in the situation, and I found something to
Yes.
make me smile, and I just did,
Yes.
and I'm happy now.
That is such a great example. Things you have to understand about yourself is that you have more coping strategies than you probably realize.
Mm,
That is a coping strategy. It's a great one. I mean, I love it. Like nothing
yeah.
makes me happier than like seeing somebody laugh or laughing or they come up with something funny. Like that's to me also very bonding, which is like another coping, right? I feel close to someone. If I'm awkward and I say I'm awkward and they're like, "Yeah, I know." Like we get bonded and that's helpful too.
So I used to do this in school and college. I never spoken about this in public. Um, when I was in a class where in my head, I was bored. But if I just genuinely felt like I just didn't want to bother being there, but I'm sitting in the classroom, I would imagine my professor in diapers, right? And that would just automatically make me laugh, right? I feel
Oh
comfortable.
my
I'm like,
god, that's
I'm okay with this class. I'm like,
hilarious.
this is the most boring lecture on earth. This guy is, but
Oh
I'm
my
imagining
god,
him
it's
diapers.
hilarious.
But now that we're talking about this, and as soon as I said this, and then you responded, and I was like, wait, I just told my daughter to do that because she's 4.5. She has this. She behaves in sometimes exactly like I do. Like when there is a lot happening, she kind of. And I told her, whenever you feel awkward, imagine somebody in diapers. And I said, but don't tell anyone because now everyone will know because it's on the podcast. But I'm like, it's fine. I feel there are coping mechanisms, and as random as that sounds, now it makes sense in my head.
That's right. That's right. And it's great. I mean, that's the other thing. It's great. Like the these things we do that work, we should keep doing. That's one of the
Yeah,
things about the book is like experiment. Not everything is going to work. Each person
yeah,
is so different. So just keep experimenting and know that like even the effort of experimenting is positive.
yeah. What have you seen that has worked? And what have you kind of used? What have you seen some people from the community use that have really helped? Because not everyone's going to do diapers like me.
Oh my god, I like the diapers though. I mentioned catchphrases in the book, and
Yeah.
catchphrases really help me. So
Mm,
the idea of a catchphrase is that in certain situations, I can help myself know what action to take
mm.
based on the catchphrase
The
that
catchphrase.
guides
Yeah.
my behaviors.
Yeah.
So the catchphrase I use in the book is protect the head. I
Mm,
mean, this has been years now of using that catchphrase.
yeah.
And it's in a situation where you're not sure like should I do this thing or should I meet up with these people?
Mm,
Your deeper question is like what is that doing to my head? Am I
mm,
protecting the head? Should I
yeah.
go on social media for 10 hours in a row? Protect the head.
No.
Like where how do you do that in a way where you're protecting the head?
But how do you know when to
You
use it?
don't probably. That's a great question. My husband will say, protect the head to me in
Mm,
certain situations, and it helps me learn which situations I should be thinking of that. I think
mm,
having someone else who helps you with your catchphrases, now, some of them are very clear. Like, remember when I said if only? I don't allow
mm.
any sentences to start if only. So that's a very clear, like, if a sentence begins
I say,
if
use that
only,
so often.
that's it. No.
Yeah.
So literally there are some things where you're like, I like objective because I know how to
Mm,
deal with it. So if only
yeah.
is very objective, like don't do it.
Yeah.
And don't compare. Like if I feel a comparison, can't do it. No, don't compare.
I think if only is such an interesting one, right? It's almost and you write about that as well, right? But like you just focus on the past, so you don't have to focus on what you have to do right now. It's a defense mechanism. So I'll keep worrying about the past. I'll
Yes.
overthink what happened, so that I don't have to do what I
Yes.
have to do right now. And
Yes.
and it's not even about the future. It's about what you have to do right now. And I feel that there's so much time spent on the past. No, I could have done this. Oh, I didn't do this well. If only I had. I do an if only I had not worn a red t-shirt and worn a green t-shirt instead. I'm superstitious about it. Whenever I wear anything red before an important meeting, in my head it's going to go wrong. So even though I have them, I won't wear them. And if I forget and I wear them and something goes wrong, I'm like, see, if only I'd worn the green t-shirt.
Exactly. Exactly. I
Which,
mean that but superstition is an interesting. I feel like I should do something on superstition
yeah,
because superstition is the desire for control. It
yeah,
says if only I could control,
yeah,
but you can't. Like the superstition is simply an expressed desire. Now, you could say to me, "Look, diapers on the teacher and if only, they're both sort of strategies to help me feel
mm,
better." But I think
yeah,
only the diapers on the teacher actually works. I would say that
mm.
the if only is a strategy that does not work.
Because it pulls you back.
It
Um,
Yeah, it doesn't for me. Yeah.
yeah, and in many ways, I think the if only takes you into a negative headspace. It doesn't it doesn't make you laugh. It makes you question everything you've done, and when you question everything you do, you question everything you're going to do, and that's what I often get stuck with. Like I'm a person who will sit here and like, for example, we're recording this. I spent an extra 20 minutes overthinking the lighting of my room when I was setting up the light for
Mhm.
our recording. I needn't have. I've set this light up here many times, but every time, if only like last time the lighting wasn't that great. It's just that. And I don't think it's. Do you think this connects to being trying to do things perfectly? Do you think there's a connection there?
I mean, you can that answer is inside of you. I have a
Hmm.
suspicion that
Hmm.
that it's a mechanism of trying to feel better. I have a feeling that
Hmm.
it's like, I'm uncomfortable that we're going to do this recording. I'm uncomfortable that I have to be seen and on camera. And
Yeah.
so I am going to, like this morning, right? I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm baggy, but I don't want to wear makeup. I don't wear makeup. And I'm like, you know what? Screw it. It really is okay. Like, you're not going to be judged for that.
Yeah.
Y-
Yeah.
you're here to talk about your ideas with someone else who understands them, who has read
Yeah.
your book, who is
Hmm.
like of you. And I think that's why I'm always like, we are the same, we are similar. That gives me a lot.
Hmm.
Maybe that's my own mechanism, but that gives me a lot of peace and comfort. It makes me feel like I have friends around the world, no joke. I have a map on my site that's the lighthouse map, and it's just other overthinkers, and it's
Hmm.
free and people can put their lighthouses up, and when you go onto the
Yeah.
map you can scroll in and see if there's one near you. But the
Yeah.
whole goal was to feel like you are safe. You are safe because other people do this. We are
Yeah.
not alone. And when you're around someone else who does it, you can laugh together. Like, you can
Yeah.
laugh that you worried about the light over and over, and that's safe.
And I think safety also comes with you kind of feeling like you are not going to be judged. I think we often kind of worry about being judged. Okay,
Yes,
I'm going to do
that's
this.
right.
I'm going to do this in the worst possible way. I'm going to do this. And you write about being beginners. I think that I remember that's the one I think I shared that day. When we first connected, and the fact is, when you start something, you're always going to be awkward about it. I mean, I think of anything which I started. I
Yeah.
remember my first ever podcast recording. My pilot was the worst pilot. I mean, in my head at least, because I only asked questions. I didn't give a point of view. I didn't say anything else. I had two people in the room, and I asked the same. I asked them question one, question two, question three, and it was done. And we listened to it. I'm like, what was that? Like, um, and but they said it was fine because they were the people who were helping me produce my first show. And so I was like, they knew it. They were part of the process. I still felt comfortable because they were part
Yeah,
of my bubble of
good.
sorts.
You trusted them and they trusted you, and they were not judging you. You were not judging you for being new, which
Yeah.
is so important. And the line, Varun, of that is, you have to be gawky to get
Hmm.
graceful. So you start gawky. We all do. Go
Yeah.
ahead, though. You were going to ask a question.
No, what you just said actually is the perfect point because when you're beginning something, and I feel now then comes the problem. We overthink before we begin as well. We worry that day one, I'm going to start something. I need to be great, or people will laugh.
Yeah, or they will just think, "Oh, I thought he was smarter than that," or "I thought she was funnier than that," or "I thought she was better than that." And by the way, when I was starting my site, I did actually get judged. I had a friend who said to me, "I don't know why you're doing this. This isn't interesting." There's no She was like, it was like my worst fear happened.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
said like, "This, I don't know. I'm just not interested in this, and I just don't think this is good."
Yeah.
And I was pissed. I was upset. I was really hurt, but I also was upset about it. Um, but it didn't stop me. So
Yeah.
I'm glad about that. I wasn't that one person's opinion. Now, if that had happened over and over, but it did happen.
Yeah. Do you
But
think that?
now I realize, like, hey, she's never started anything. She's
Hmm.
scared. Like, that was like her being like, you're a beginner. I'm like, yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
beginner.
So what? I guess that's the response there. Like, because what I was just thinking of is that when you start something, the assumption is that, oh, I'm going to be judged. I won't be good at it. So why try anyway? But, and I would always turn on someone and say, just start off like you would when you were a kid. But then I look at my daughter, I look at other kids, I'm like, they worry about being judged as well. Now, I think it's innately
Right.
something, and I don't know where, does it naturally come to some people or is it something that we do early on?
It's vulnerability. Don't you think it's vulnerability? Like it's going outside of your
Mm.
comfort zone, right? Even your daughter probably feels that. Like, I don't want to go outside of my comfort zone, which
Yeah.
is what growth is.
Yeah. And also, when you look at it, it's also about the fact that you're trying to figure out, maybe if we teach people to learn to enjoy the weirdness, the gawkiness of it. So I'm connecting levity to the gawkiness.
Yes, by the way, that's what I do. I gave a talk at Pinterest a month ago that was about awkwardness. And the whole purpose was, this is,
Celebrated.
here are stories of awkwardness. Here is like what we love about awkwardness in popular culture. I mean, it was the whole premise of my talk is like, it is awkward for me to be here talking to you right now. I feel awkward, but it
Yeah.
also makes me laugh. And like the fact that those of you that are laughing, also, by the way, I don't feel like I'm for everyone. I feel
Hmm.
like the people I'm really for. And that's what I mean about like overthinkers around the world. Like those are my people, but I'm not meant, this other
For
person who
everyone.
criticized me, she's not my person.
Hmm.
But my overthinkers that I am, that's why my book is dedicated to overthinkers, cuz I'm
Yeah.
like, that's us. Like we support each other. We have each other's backs.
I think also the energy you use, right? If you worry about the people who aren't your people, I'm going to use this term. In this, I, my people is a thing, and I'm going to connect this to something which my wife says, and she says you got to collect people who fill up that. She calls it her dining table, the dining table in of her life. Um,
I love that.
and what she says is that you got to find those people, collect those people who will eventually land up on that dining table in your life towards the end of your life. Like who do you want on that table?
I love
Collect
that.
them. Everybody else you don't need.
She's very wise. She's wise.
Yeah, I as my sister says, I punched up. Or is that the right term to use?
Yeah, no, that's right.
Uh, you know, the other piece, and we were just talking about energy, and this is one part where you kind of talk about that what we use our energy on is so important. If we can spend our energy on people who are pulling it out of us. And I remember you even write about the fact that when those waves come to you, when that wave of anxiety hits you, you got to always note down what might have started it. And over time, you will realize that these are my triggers. These are people,
Yes.
things that kind of trigger it. Um,
Yes.
and also in some way pull away from the energy something suck from you. So you're spending your energy on the right things and not on the things that really pull them out of you. So, and I guess that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. And I don't know why we've never looked at it that way.
Well, by the way, we when we were talking about your tweet, like I sensed that there would be, I called it red dot in the book
Mm.
because it was
Yeah,
came back
yeah,
to an old story, but I
yeah,
sensed that there would be that.
yeah.
And so that's what made me, and you said, "Do you want to do the podcast?" And I said, "Absolutely." And the more you just keep trying to sense it and have it
Mm,
confirmed and sense it and have it confirmed, it actually is a
yeah,
great thing in your life. Like you find like, "Oh, I don't have to spend time. I can say no if I don't sense it and
yeah,
just build the strength of sensing it when it is there."
yeah. And I think it's a better way of saying, because there's one thing I've seen shared a lot on the internet, which I feel is easy to say but tough to do, which is that you need to you know, don't look at all your friends and only keep those around who give you the right kind of energy. Now that makes give you the right kind of value, but that makes it seem transactional. Like, oh, you're not valuable to me, so I'll push you away. What you just
Yeah, I
said, I
don't
think
like
that
that.
makes more sense. Is that you suck the energy out of me, so I'd rather not have you around.
Yeah, and sometimes there can be a purpose to that as well, by the way,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's red dot and blue dot, and there can be a purpose to blue dots. You just really need to be intentional about it.
Explain red dot and blue dot for people.
Yeah. So red dot. So this came back to a story of when I was right out of college. I had a friend who was working with a writer who was going through her address book, because it was a literary assistant. She was an assistant to this writer, going through her address book and noticed all these stickers next to people, blue
Mm.
or red. And she asked the writer, like, what's going on with these stickers? And the writer said, well, my therapist told me put a blue dot next to the ones that suck energy and a red dot next to the ones who bring energy into my life.
Yeah.
So my friend and I called each other red dots because we knew we
Mm.
brought energy into my life. When I met my husband, I knit him a scarf with a big red dot in the middle because he is a red dot. And red dots are fantastic, right?
Yeah.
But it's not that you don't need any blue dots or even purple. Like there are
Mm.
people that do both, right?
Mm.
It's just that you need to be intentional. If you have somebody in your life who complains all the time, that's probably a blue dot.
Mm.
And you probably don't want to spend a ton of time around them, but there
Mm.
could be certain situations where like that is helpful to you to be able to complain with this person. I'm not sure, like you have to decide for yourself, but mostly you need to know.
I know exactly you're talking about a person who I know. I have so many friends. I have like 5 names that have come to mind who I only talk to when I want to crib. I call them my
Exactly.
cribbing friends. I just call them crib about the world, crib
Ex-
about everything else. Go away. Hopefully, do that over a drink, so
exactly.
it makes it more fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. And so it's not, so I would say if somebody's like get rid of the friends that blah blah blah, it's not that. It's be intentional.
Yeah.
And if you're sitting there and you need to reach out to someone, start to build the relationships to the red dots. I've had
Hmm.
new friends. I've had people who I can just are red dots. They reach out and they say, let's get together. And I'm like, yeah, this is a new friend. I'm in my 40s,
Yeah.
but like this is the new path I want to build.
Yeah. And I think what that also does, it's like what you're saying is just follow the energy, right? Follow the energy
Yes.
you want to channel within yourself from others, from
Yes.
things. Um, I've realized as I've gotten older that you don't have to do everything. Like, the tendency is, I think that's where overthink comes also, right? You want to do all the cool things. Um, I want to make
Yeah,
TikToks.
that's
I can't
right.
make TikToks. You want to do all the cool stuff, right? And then you like when you try to do it, you just like, okay, I'm not enjoying doing this, but everybody seems to want to do it, so I'll do it. Like I love podcasting because honestly, in my head, while we have a camera on, I just love talking to a mic and talking to people. So in my head, I'm not doing this for camera. I'm doing it for a conversation. But tell me talking to a
Yes.
mic, camera, which I'm now learned to, like you said, like practicing, putting yourself out there. And would I really want to do it if I had a choice? Maybe not. But I talk into a mic, so maybe just follow the energy. I guess that's the essence of that.
And feel like it's okay for you to you have agency. Like you're not just forced into everything. Like you have agency to be like, I get a lot of energy from talking into the mic and I don't want to be on camera. If you ever decided that that other part was sucking too much away, you have agency to change accordingly. And I know with careers and like putting yourself out there, that can feel like you're forced into things, but you can always work to your strengths. You can always like push into the things that feel good and sort of minimize. It's not like you can
Yeah.
get rid of them, but minimize the stuff that
Yeah.
doesn't.
And to minimize, you even spoke about a few things you can do, right? So here's the thing: the internet is all about affirmations, but a lot of the
Mm,
affirmation spiel out there, I think that makes you overthink more than anything else, right? Like, okay, because people are putting
mm.
affirmations out there in the most internet way possible. If there's no other way I can put it down, like let's make it cool to put
Yeah.
online. So like I'll put on a post-it, I'll put my hand in front, or I'll find the right kind of image and have like, so you're gonna have all that stuff there. And but at some point, when I was reading about affirmations here, and remember you were saying that talking to yourself is like messages to yourself. That kind of makes sense, because you're kind of setting your own mood. You're not expecting someone else to set your mood for you, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And part of it, even with the affirmation world, it's not all bad. It just gets generic. and you lose sense of the actual connection, which happens inside of you, where you're like, again, it's kind of back to red dot, blue dot. Like, is this piece of information resonating? And it's, you start moving so fast, you don't even know. You don't even know any. It's just like you're not in touch with that.
And I feel also what happens is that sometimes affirmations become negative towards someone else. Like you're trying to tell
Mm.
yourself you're awesome, the other person doesn't understand you. And
Mm.
in my head, I'm like,
Don't
is that the
compare.
right way to do it?
Don't compare. Don't compare. To me, that's a don't compare.
Hmm.
That's a compare. That's what I'm hearing when I hear that.
Yeah.
Like, if you're like, that person doesn't get it, that's that. I don't know why, but when I hear that, I'm like, don't compare.
Yeah. Because it's the same as looking at the past, right? You're just trying to find some way to deflect it. And
Yes.
deflecting feels like classic overthinking as well.
Yep.
That's what we do, right?
Yep.
It's that
Yep.
I say that if you look at it, Twitter is all about overthinking because you're saying what about
Oh my
is
God.
whole Twitter is like what about
Yes.
on
Yes.
everything that happens in the world.
Agree.
So my question to you is that when you talk about self affirmations, you also speak about writing. What have you seen? If I'm an individual, I'm trying to follow some processes. How have you seen, or rather, what have you seen as being best way to start? Because the problem often is to start. You don't,
Mm.
you think so much about, okay, do I do self affirmations? Do I do journaling? If I want to journal, do I get a notebook? Do I write it on my phone? You're going to spend more time thinking about how you're going to start, what you're going to do, and you don't do it. But where do you start?
I have two thoughts about this. I have two different approaches depending on who
Hmm.
you are. I mean, how you work. One is I encourage people to realize that writing starts inside of your head,
Hmm.
thinking clearly, articulating ideas, not just like being cast in the sea, but like starting to make them clearer. And
Hmm.
that writing is an iceberg, and all of the things that are below the water is what's happening in your head. It's not always just what you're writing down. This little thing
Hmm.
above the ground is what you're actually writing.
Yeah.
So I would say that there are lots of exercises you can do where you don't even need to decide about your book or your pen. What you need to decide about is inside, like, what am I trying to say and who am I trying to say it to? And that's the iceberg work. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is, and I am a fan of it and I put it in the book, is that Artist's Way, the Julia Cameron
Hmm.
morning pages. If you're
Yeah.
someone who just isn't sure even what's in the iceberg, when you wake up in the morning, grab a piece of paper and a pen and know that you will throw these pages away. Don't get
Hmm.
married to what these pages are. Write
Yeah.
3 pages longhand every morning, just when you wake up. Just see what comes out. You'll be surprised. And then set them to the side. You're doing the iceberg work. Now, once the iceberg work has happened and you're like, now and this is for me when I got the diagnosis and I was like, I have so much to say now. The iceberg was like building like crazy. Then I started writing, and rewriting to start to figure out what that shape was.
When you're just saying that, I'm thinking about how. So I couldn't journal for the longest time. When I was talking about what do you do before you start journaling, that was me talking about myself. I went through that. I went 3 months. I bought 2 notebooks. I bought a journal off Amazon, which was supposed to be a journal you would write in. I bought a journal meant to help you journal. And then I downloaded a journal app on my phone. Till eventually one day just took out a notebook, said, let me just write. So I don't do 3 pages. I try to do as many words that come to me first thing in the morning. Wake up, just like I do like a paragraph. And I guess that puts
Great.
less pressure on me. I'm just writing whatever I can write. But what it's also kind of shown me is that it's. I think the morning is when your first thoughts come out. You start your day off with, oh my god, I got so many things to do. I got so much to accomplish, and there's something there, right? It's that we start off
Yes.
with just like the morning is this like this hits you, and it starts with the to dos.
Well, for me, and I think that's a great point, because one thing I learned over time about my anxiety is that it would ramp up in the morning. Like, I would get
Mm,
crazy morning energy and try to fix everything and clean up and la. And now I try to use it as a
mm,
tool to have this conversation with you and bring a lot of like fresh thought to it, or to tackle a challenging problem instead of getting sucked into stuff that will solve itself anyway. I sit
yeah,
and write, or I sit and try to figure something out, or just tackle the biggest thing in front of me,
yeah.
and it helps.
What we also often do is that we kind of think about it as I have too many problems to solve. So sometimes you start with the easiest one. I think I like what you just said about the fact that you start with the tough one. You start with the big one because that's the one that's going to stay in your head while you're
Oh
doing
my
the
god,
easy
yes.
stuff. Because you're spending your
Absolutely.
day worrying about that one thing you have to do, but no, no, do it. It's like when you make a presentation, you'll do everything except for making that presentation. You will spend your
I'm
time. That
like
smoothie will take so long to make. like, like my smoothie making goes so long when I have to make a presentation that I'm like,
Oh my god.
I put
Hilarious.
so much effort into that one. There's hardcore effort going into that.
Oh my
Um,
god.
and you talk about you know just like weighing the risk of action versus inaction, and
Yeah.
most of us don't think about that enough. We just say it's risky. It's there's fear. There is obviously anxiety, all that stuff. But we don't think about what happens when if you don't act. Uh, I'd love to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think another way to say it is, if you have this question in your mind your whole life, like, what if I did that? What if I tried to start my own business and you never do it?
Mm,
How will what will that the inaction actually does have an outcome that you may not be able to gauge. Yes, there is a risk to going and starting the business, but you will get an answer. You will like move down that path, and you will know once and for all, and it will help you resolve something important,
mm,
possibly. So the thought that you're just going to stay in a marriage, let's say, or you're going to
mm,
stay in a job and it's really not working, um and you think, well, I'm going to stay safe, like,
mm.
the next thing you know,
Yeah,
that spouse may leave you. You get fired
yeah.
from that job because you're not able to bring what
What's
you need
needed?
to bring to that. Yeah.
And I think we also tell ourselves so many things. Right. One of the terms which I spent a lot of time on trying to figure out and kind of soak in was you mentioned cognitive distortions, and
Yes.
you make a list of things, and obviously that comes towards the chapter where you also talk about the December, which obviously you try to find. I think it's also birthdays though. I think birthdays and
Mm,
December.
you're right. You're right. You're right.
Like I'm going to be 40. Everyone's like, what are you going to do when you're 40? And I'm like, so I did this thing last time. Like, no, I'm going to be the fittest I can be by the time I'm 40. So I'm like working out, doing. Always been that person, but like really hard. So everyone's like, what are you doing for 40? I'm just working out. I'm like, but I've been working out for like years. So it's not like it's a new thing. But essentially giving yourself this is what I'm doing this year. I'm going to drink less. I'm going to eat more vegetables. Although I've always liked vegetables. I don't know why I said that, but I like eating vegetables. When you come up with these things, you tell yourselves that what I've been doing so far has been bad. What I'm going to do going
Mm,
ahead is good. And then you make a plan which you never
mm,
stick to.
right.
And
And then you feel bad about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
One of the things, by the way, I've been doing is on my so I'm 46, right?
Mm,
Am I? Yes. Yes. Because yes, because 1975. I'm 46. I'm about to turn 47.
mm,
And I've started in my head to say I'm 50.
mm.
And I've started putting it in like different places, like you're 50, you're 50. Because I don't want to build some big thing around 50.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I'm already 50. Whatever. Like I just what I want for 50 or for 40 or for whatever keep is to keep having momentum on
Yeah.
addressing challenges. Like those
Yeah.
challenges may be physical, they may be mental, but like if for example this year my New Year's resolution was figure out that hip pain, which is so
Hmm.
perfect for somebody in their 40s, but like I've been just having this problem with my hip and I could not figure it out. And so my whole thing was like if it takes all year, go to
Hmm.
as many doctors as you need to go to physical
Yeah.
therapists. Let's just figure that out.
Yeah.
And there's something about instead of making some big life change, but just being like, take action on the stuff that is like genuinely there.
Yeah.
Um, the stuff that's scary. Like, and that doesn't mean like lose weight, it's more like, you know, to me, the hip pain was like the biggest fear. So, like, whatever that is, like, be like, I'll take action on this. I'm going to break it down and I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. And then you can do it. And then you actually do feel better.
So I told myself in 2021 that I will stop overthinking it and actually sit down and write. And the only way I could start writing was writing a newsletter. And I said, I won't give pressure. Initially, obviously, right? I said, okay, I will write a newsletter which has 3 sections every week. Obviously, right? That's what you tell yourself. And after 2 weeks, you're like, there's no way I'm writing 3 sections every week. So eventually came down to, but I continued to write. I made it smaller and smaller. Now I write about 200 words, 300 words a week. But what that did
No,
for
that's
me,
great though.
because all I told myself is I'll just going to write. Um, in 2021, I wrote my first book and it got published this
There
year in
you go.
Feb.
Oh my God, that's
All I did was
fantastic.
I said, no pressure, write 200 words a week,
That's
which is
perfect.
manageable.
That's perfection.
Yeah.
I
And it was
love
just
that.
that
What a great example.
I set myself a low bar. I'm like, this is it. This is the lowest bar. Like 200 words, you can do that. Like, you got this.
Yes.
Um, and that's all I did. And it made the process of writing the book easier because I wrote the book exactly like I write my newsletter. Like, just write for an hour, write tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow. You want to write, don't want to write tomorrow, write day after. But I did almost not
Yes.
finish the book on time. But that's a whole different story because I went through 2 weeks of I'm going to sit every day and write for 2 hours because I'm behind
Right.
schedule on this
Right.
book. But yeah,
Yeah, you didn't follow your what you had learned,
yeah.
which is to make the bar lower.
You just got to put less pressure on yourself, and I feel that's really what helped. It's
Yes.
just that I put myself into that position, and because and most people say no, put that pressure on yourself, get anxious and it'll help you. And you talk about that as well.
No,
You talk
no.
about that in the book, saying
Yeah.
anxiety doesn't help you. And we always say like,
It does
you
not
got to
help you.
feel like you're on the edge. I don't want to feel on the edge.
No,
I don't want to
actually
go skydiving.
breaking things down in an approachable way. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
It feels like a crazy thing to do. I'm not jumping off a plane. Like, there's no way. I'm not putting myself through that. There is nothing enjoyable in that in my head. No, you'll enjoy it because
Yep.
you'll feel the thrill. I mean, that's not a thrill for me. That's like me feeling like I'm going to
Yeah,
die.
and by the way, maybe somebody else with different brain chemistry, that's
Enjoys it.
good for them. But
Yeah,
part of it is like this we each have our own brain chemistry and we need different things.
yeah,
But I don't think anyone needs excess anxiety. It could be that
yeah.
some people that aren't already oriented that way,
Hmm.
who have none, it's helpful.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's hard for me to understand because that's just not how my brain is.
I want to circle back to cognitive distortions. I love the list. And I think it's such a relatable list. And I'm going to go one by one. So I'm going to name them. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to name them, and
Okay.
you're going to tell all of us what they are. Although the first word I can never
Okay.
pronounce this right. Cata catastro how
Catastrophizing.
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 There are some words I cannot do.
So catastrophizing, that's like a big one for me, catastrophizing. That is where I think like anything I do, I'm always thinking of the worst case scenario.
Hmm.
What if? What if like there's a tidal wave that like comes and sweeps away everyone from the beach. What if?
Yeah.
That's catastrophizing. And so part of it is just recognizing when your brain is going to an extreme in that way. That's catastrophizing. You have
Black
no
and white
reason to
thinking.
think it's going to do that. Oh, black and white thinking. That's like permeates everything. By the way, America
Hmm.
is like the freaking home of black and white thinking. It's
Ah, you'd be
all or
surprised.
nothing.
You'd be surprised. You got to.
Really? Really? Well, that's good to hear, because it's like big time here. So this is the thought that, well, if I'm not perfect, I'm
Hmm.
shit. And it's like, well, you're
Hmm.
not. That's black and white thinking. Maybe
Yeah.
you're somewhere in between in the gray zone.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't think anybody's black or white, are they? I don't think it's possible.
No,
How? It's not
no,
even like.
no. And
Um.
nothing is, by the way, nothing is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if anybody thinks there is that generalization, you're just missing the grays. I guess that's the only way I can put that down.
Yeah, you just don't have enough information to see. You don't have enough information to see the grays. Or, and it's often so much simpler to cast someone as, the other. It's so easy for people to be like, that person is evil, I am good. Black and
Hmm.
white, like very simple. And it's just
Yeah.
not how reality is. But it is harder to
Hmm.
deal with grays, but it is
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Overgeneralization.
My husband says this is my biggest one.
I know. I read that out and I'm like, oh my god. Yeah.
Um, everybody loves this. Everybody
Yeah.
hates this. Everybody
Yeah.
I know believes this. Um, and again, these are black and white thinking is sort of the theme throughout, but like
Hmm.
overgeneralization, making it seem like uh a couple pieces of data means everything, everyone.
And I think also it basically is like, so we have this. I'm going with India analogy here. So India has many languages, many sides to it. Now the south side of India has, I'm just counting has a bunch of states, and we all speak different languages. We don't speak Hindi, which is the predominant language in the country.
Yep.
But
Yep.
whenever someone refers to any of the people from any of the states in the south, we called, oh, you're from South India, right? And you generalized in terms of what you eat,
Like this
how
is
you
yeah,
talk.
like it's one
You're from the
thing.
south.
Yes.
I mean, like we have different
Yeah.
states, we speak different languages. Our food is different. The way we dress is different. Just because we don't speak what a large part of the north speaks,
Oh my
South India.
Overgeneralization.
So yeah, so that's why I was smiling. I'm like, I've heard this my entire life, and I don't look like
Yes.
most people from the south. Weirdly enough, because and this is like, it's not shaky territory because I've been called this my entire life. Most people from the south have a slightly darker complexion than I do. But
Okay.
I
There
grew up
we
there. My
go.
family's from there from generations, and so it's not like we came from somewhere
Yes.
else. But it's, oh, you don't look like you're from South India. I'm like, I grew up there. I'm from there. Just like you're going on my
Isn't
color.
it
But yeah,
strange how the South of all places
yeah,
has these like associations with it? Like
yeah.
the South of the United States has an association. And a
Hmm.
lot of it is always based on overgeneralization.
Something
It's
there.
interesting.
Something to look into, I guess. Someone
Okay.
drop Malcolm Gladwell a
Yeah.
note. He might just make a book out of it.
Yeah, someone tell us what that is.
um, Labeling. I love labeling. Labeling's great. I mean, as a concept, not as something to do, as a
No,
concept.
you tell me an example of labeling that you've seen.
Um, I am very bad with numbers. Is me labeling myself all the time. I can count. I can use a
That's right.
calculator, but I cannot do numbers according to me because I label myself as someone who can't do numbers. I handled finance for a company
That's
for
right.
5 years, but still, yeah. That's, I mean,
Labeling is
there's
very
no.
self-limiting. It's very
Yeah,
self-limiting. It's black and white. It's like,
yeah,
here is a truth about me I cannot do, or here's a truth about them, parents and their kids. my kid is
Yeah.
just not good at. My kid cannot. It's like, no labels. Don't label.
Yeah.
Let them sort of figure it out. Grayscale.
I can go on. There's a lot of these coming up. Personalization.
It's all about me. Like what do I like seeing everything through your own lens and thinking that everything is a reflection on you.
Yeah. Everything's about you. Like
Everything's
literally,
about
anything
you.
can go wrong in the world, it's because of you.
Exactly. Which our brains are oriented that way, but it's a matter of getting enough perspective to see that that's not
Yeah.
true.
Mind reading.
This is another favorite of mine. I know what he thinks about me. How? How do you know? I know she doesn't like me. Do
Yeah.
you? Did she tell you that? I mean,
No,
you
I can
you
just
can't
sense
know
it.
unless someone has said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't
Oh, I
know.
love the next one. Actually, I will love the next two. Fortune telling.
Yeah, yeah. I love both mind reading and fortune telling because it's like, wait, do you think you're a mind reader? Are
Yeah.
you a fortune teller? Do you know what's going to happen? Do you know
Yeah.
like what the future holds?
Yeah.
It's helpful even just to spot it. I mean, the thing about all these cognitive distortions is just to say, this is mind reading. This is me
Yeah.
thinking I'm a mind reader. This is catastrophizing. The more you can name it and
Okay.
spot it.
Three more to go. Three more to go. My favorite one, uh, control fallacy.
Oh my
It's like,
God, me too.
ah,
Again, it's kind of like personalization, right? It's like, I think
yeah,
everything is about me. I think I
yeah,
can control everything. We were talking about this earlier. It was the if only. It's
yeah.
superstitions. Superstitions are
And also,
control
everything has to
fallacy.
be done by me. If
Yes.
would you say the connection, right? Like, if I don't do it, it isn't going to work. It's also why you
Yes.
overthink handing over responsibilities to other people. If you're a leader in a team, you're any of those, like, I have to
That's right.
control. If I don't, it's going to go sideways.
Micromanagement. Micromanagement
101.
is control fallacy.
Yeah.
Yes. 101.
The other fallacy, fallacy of change.
Ah, yeah. um, do you have an example for that one in your life?
If I'm just trying to think of, I had this for a while. If I can become more organized, I will get
Mm,
things done better.
yeah,
But like someone told me today morning, said that you're organized the way that works for you. You don't have to be organized the way
I love
everybody
that.
else is.
I love that.
And that's, you're trying to be organized like what you think other people expect you to be like, and you think that will make you happy, but innately you're trying to change who you are because
And
you think
there's
it'll
if
make.
only, right? There's if
Yeah.
only in there. If only I
Yeah.
were to
Yeah.
write, my life would change in this way.
Yeah.
But you're often setting unrealistic unrealistic goals for like
Yeah.
how everything will change if this thing happens.
The last one, emotional reasoning. Ah.
Oh my God. This is a painful one for America right now. This is a painful one.
Has been for a while, hasn't
Um,
it?
oh, it really has. This is the idea that um the emotions that you have or the temporary and ever-changing emotions are the same thing as logic.
Hmm.
That you can or the same thing as fact, that emotions are fact.
Yeah.
So understanding the world around you based on changing emotions is the
Yeah.
same thing as understanding for example, like let's say something like 95% of kids who are kidnapped by people in their family. This is just like a known fact,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But emotionally, we're like, oh my God, kids get kidnapped. It's a stranger. A stranger's going to
Yeah.
come get them. And there's just emotional reasoning disconnect
Yeah.
around like what is actually happening because it is
Yeah.
scary, because you are dealing with emotions.
I think I also kind of use it like a shield where it's like, I couldn't do this, so I'm never going to be able to do it. It's like, someone who starts a company and it fails. Let's say your first startup fails. Like, I failed at
Ooh,
my
good
startup.
point.
Never going to be able to do a startup, right? Um,
Yeah, that's right.
I built a startup that succeeded, and now I'm like, will I build another one that succeeds?
No,
Maybe I
that's a great
can't.
point.
Maybe it's a one-hit wonder. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, or that was that situation, but I'm having fear, so that won't be true again. You
yeah,
don't even understand that your emotions are affecting your reasoning.
yeah, yeah. I mean, each of these for me are like, and you need to make cue cards. You got to carry them
I know.
around and say, "What are you doing right now? Go through these cards, uh, hand them out to people, and say, yeah, this is what you're doing right now." I have a feeling I'll hand myself these cards half the time. I do most of these all the
True.
time,
I mean,
and
yeah, definitely my husband is like overgeneralization.
emotional reasoning is me all the time, all the time. I was lying down in bed yesterday morning saying, I don't think I can do any of these things. Not no point. Why don't you just like call it a day and just like lie in bed? And Pooja, my wife, is like, get out of this, get off the bed, go do what you have to do. I'm
Yeah,
like,
and
fine.
like here is evidence that if you learn to approach it in the right way, 200
Yeah,
words a week, you
yeah.
can. You can.
I can keep doing this and keep having this conversation because I think that there's so many aspects to this. And I, whenever there's a great conversation, I always say this. And my listeners know this, is that I'm like, you always need to leave something for a part two. And
Yeah,
in my
of
head, there
course.
is a part two at some point of time of this conversation. Um,
Great.
but thank you so much. It's just one of those conversations where I feel like, in a conversation where you feel like you've spoken your mind as much as you've tapped into someone else's mind. This felt like one of those for me, and I think that's what makes a great podcast episode, when it's like you're sharing all around, and I think that's what I've processed through this whole conversation.
Yeah, that's what I love. I love I wanted to get to know you too. So I think that's really important too. I love being able to bring our full selves to the conversation.
Yeah, yeah. And what I'm going to do is that I'll definitely, if you're in India anytime, and if I'm in San Francisco, which I might because I've got family in San Francisco,
Yes.
and we're gonna do one of those like um, my people conversation. We're gonna catch up and do that. But till then, thanks for doing this.
I would love that. I would love that. You can Yes, I would love that. And you can come visit me at Pinterest too. We can have a lunch
Done,
at Pinterest, which would be nice.
done. We'll do that. Yes, sounds like a plan. I will not overthink that one. I'm gonna drop by and do it.
Don't
But
overthink it.
thanks.
Don't
Yeah.
overthink it.
I hope you learned a bunch from this conversation, because there's so much I unpacked from this and learned, and I really found a way to kind of own my own overthinking. And more conversations like this dropping on the channel. So I want to make sure you hit subscribe and smash that bell icon. See you guys in the next one.